attendees are in listen-only mode.
Oh, something gone wrong? I've got a blank screen.
Hello everyone. I'll fix it right away, Nigel. Hello everyone and welcome to the SFL webinar with Nigel Ashford. We're very honored to have him here tonight. He will give a talk on creating your network. But before we go to the talk, let me tell you a small something about European Students for Liberty and Students for Liberty in general. I'm Nick Roskins. I'm the webinar director for European Students for Liberty, and we started about 2 years ago as a non-profit organization run by and for students dedicated to liberty. We are a spin-off, if you will, of Students for Liberty in the US, which was formed in 2008. Our job is to connect liberty-friendly students with other students, with organizations, and with resources to help them advance their ideas and applications of classical liberalism. Those resources include free books for student groups, handbooks, tabling kits, leadership training, an academic journal, conferences, and many other things. More about that later. Our webinar series was set up to provide an additional resource to students, namely ideas, which are not always as easy to come by for students because it's not easy to attend conferences, to travel around Europe. So this is a free and easy way for students to get to know the ideas of liberty in general. Like I said, tonight we have Dr. Nigel Ashford, who is a senior program officer at the Institute for Humane Studies, and he works on many of the Institute's educational programs. Chances are many of you have already heard of or attended an IHS seminar in the United States. He joined IHS from the United Kingdom, where he was a professor of politics and a Jean Monnet Scholar in European Integration at Staffordshire University. He is also the author of several books, including Principles for a Free Society. And like I said, tonight he will be giving a short lecture on creating your network as a means of advancing your own career and the ideas of liberty. During the talk, you will be able to post questions under the question tab in your control panel. Feel free to post them there at any time, and after the lecture they can be presented to Dr. Ashford, who will then be able to answer them. Now, without further ado, I give you Dr. Nigel Ashford.
Sorry, Nick, I've got a blank screen.
Ah, yes, no problem. I can just...
You can solve that, all right?
Absolutely. Oh, I think you'll need to show your screen. You are the presenter, but I think...
So what do I need to do? Shall I get Nathan? Can you do it, or I need to do something this end?
I think you will need to click Show My Screen at this point, and then we'll be able to see your screen.
I have no idea where that is on this. So no, let me grab Nathan. Oh, wait a minute. It's come. Yeah. It's come up. And then if I get rid of this, presumably. Can I get rid of this?
I think you will need to click Show My Screen.
Sorry, where is it?
Should be on the...
Nick, I think you have to share his screen for him.
Sorry about this, ladies and gentlemen. I need to do something on my end, and I'll get Nathan to do it, shall I?
Yes, if you can.
Yeah. 1 second. Sorry, Nathan. Can I grab you? It went blank, and now it's come up with all this. There we go. So can we move? Yeah, can we move that?
There you go. All good?
Okay. Thank you very much. Sorry about that short delay. I am an old person with technological difficulties. So what we want to talk about this evening is creating your network. And I want to talk first of all about why networking is important both for you personally and also for Liberty. You're going to meet a very large number of people throughout your life. Some of them are going to be very important to you as lovers, as friends, as mentors, as employers. Your challenge is you don't know who they are in advance. And also, there's no limit to the number of people who might belong to that network. So one of the things you need to do is how do you establish, when you're meeting all these people, those people that will be of some value that you want to be part of your network. Secondly, it's important for Liberty because messengers matter. Every time that you present some libertarian ideas to someone else, or even if you're known as a libertarian, even if you're not talking about politics, that is sending a message to other people. So the challenge is how do you present those ideas in a way that will be effective in reaching other people, that will get people who are not instinctively libertarians, which is probably most people, and get them to see the wisdom of the ideas that you hold. So that's the goal, is to why it's important. Let me define what I mean by networking. There are people communicating with each other, sharing ideas, information, and resources. Nothing too complicated. But many people, they resist the idea of networking. It has a negative connotation in their mind. I think one reason is that some people see this as unethical, that you're just using other people for your own benefit. But I don't think that's correct. You know, I think networking, if it's going to be effective, has to be of mutual benefit. It's a positive sum game where both people. Can you see me anyway, even with that screen?
Hello, Nigel. No, for the moment we can't see the screen. We're working on it. In any case, we'll be sending on the presentation to everyone, so everyone will receive it.
You can't currently see me?
No, we're figuring out to...
Go try and do something your end. So I just keep going anyway, shall I?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't think it is unethical unless you make it unethical. Networking should be of mutual benefit. And other people don't like it because of personality. They're shy, they don't know how to deal with other people, what you say when you meet a complete stranger. So what I want to do is give you some very specific tips near the end about how everyone can be a networker. For some people find it easier than others, but everyone can do it. So the question you have to ask yourself is, what are the goals that you want to achieve? Oh, is that not working now? That's strange. It doesn't seem to be... There's no reason why it's not... The PowerPoint is not clicking through. Do I need to be doing anything on my end?
At this point, we can't see it yet.
You can't see me at all? You can't see the PowerPoint?
I don't know.
Nigel, I just...
but you can just continue with the
Nigel, I just made you a presenter again. You should see a box pop up that has the option to show my screen.
Yeah. Sorry, I can't see it. Show my screen.
Or on your GoToWebinar control panel.
I can see it. Yeah, I can see it now.
All right.
Yeah. Click on that.
Yep, click on that.
Can you now see me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Perfect.
Now let me see if this will work. Yes. So why do it? What's the benefits of networking? Well, it's I think, an important part for success in life. It's mutually beneficial. It helps you and the people you interact with. It makes you feel like you belong to a community. I think those who've got involved with Students for Liberty, for example, have felt a sense of belonging to this community. And although we're libertarians, people sometimes think we're only interested in individuals. I think everyone has a desire to belong to something beyond themselves, to have some sort of community. And libertarianism can be, or libertarian organizations can be that community. It can help promote liberty. And what I would say is that networking is fun. People are endlessly fascinating because they're all so different. So all those people out there that you haven't met who will be interesting to engage with, you've got all that to look forward to. So you need to establish what are the goals you want to achieve. Is it from getting a job to finding a partner to promoting liberty? What's the goals that you're setting yourself up for in your networking? Well, one possibility is getting a job. And all the studies show that more than half the people who get a job get it through some sort of personal connection. That is, they're not blindly applying for a job. They actually have some connection with that job in advance. And I think probably it's even higher when it comes to the whole political realm. You can use networking to improve your ideas and your work. There's bound to be something wrong with some of the ideas that you have, so you want to go there, present them, and see how other people react to them, and then you'll modify your ideas as some of the arguments you hear may make you change your mind. So you need to want to communicate with other people. To promote your ideas, presumably you think your ideas are good ones, so networking is a way of presenting your ideas, trying to convince other people about the merits of your work. So taking opportunities when it's convenient, when it's suitable, to try and promote these classical liberal ideas. You want to establish a good reputation. That is, when your name is being used, you want people to be saying good things about you and not bad things about you. We say at IHS, don't be a lunch tax. Be the sort of person that others want to go out and have lunch with, to share with, because you listen to them, you integrate them, you've got something interesting to say. You're not somebody who simply dominates the conversation and talks about the things that you want to do, that you're interested in. So you want to establish a good reputation, that people have good feelings when they hear your name. You want invitations to write and speak, because we want to improve those skills, both to promote your ideas, but also to promote yourself, to get better at writing and talking. So you should always be looking for opportunities to do that. Publications, you should always be thinking when you're writing a substantial work, is there some outlet that I can use to publish those ideas? I once had a friend who said he didn't want to have he wanted no unpublished thoughts. And I corrected and said, you want no unpublished good thoughts. So make sure they're well thought out, but every time, for example, you write a paper for a class, an essay in a class, is this something that you could turn into a publication? Probably most of the time not, but sometimes it could. You need letters of recommendation. You need not only professors, but other people who are willing to write letters in support of your future career goals when you go into the employment market. You need to understand the culture, that the cultures of being a student and going into the world of work or going into the world of politics are not the same. You need to know what's the right way of behaving in those circumstances. For example, one thing, there's a big difference between organizations about when they're very hierarchical, to what extent you show deference to the people above, you always call them Mr. or Doctor, or is the organization relatively flat? Is there a lack of deference? Is there an ability to talk directly to your boss? Can you feel freely about to say the things that you want to say? So you need to understand what the different cultures are that exist out there when you go beyond the university. Networking will provide you with intellectual stimulation. presumably one of the reasons you're involved with Students for Liberty is that you find these ideas interesting, that you love discussing ideas. So networking is another opportunity to find more people who also are interested in discussing the ideas to give yourself an intellectual high. And it creates a community, something I've already mentioned before, that I think all of us feel the need to belong to something beyond ourselves as an individual. Networks can create those communities. And of course, it doesn't have to be one, it can be many. Now, there are some key concepts in the networking literature that you might find useful to understand. One is dispersed knowledge. Everyone knows something that's of value to you, and those of you who've studied Hayek will all be familiar with this concept. The strength of weak ties. Most people get their jobs, up to 80% according to some studies, through a personal connection who is not a close friend. It may be a friend of a friend, or the brother of someone you're dating, or some sort of connection like that. So don't only, when you're building your network, don't only think about the people you're close to, but your network could also be a much wider connection, people who are relatively weak ties, not a close friend. A friend is defined in much of the literature as someone that you meet at least once a month. Acquaintances, weak ties are much wider than that. The importance of reciprocity. I talked about the fact that networking often has a bad image in people's minds because often it seems like it's one person taking from another. Well, those who are only takers are not effective networkers. They quickly establish a bad reputation and nobody wants to associate with them. Effective networking requires reciprocity, i.e. that people believe that they're willing to cooperate with you because they believe you are willing to cooperate with them, that you have something to offer them, or if you don't, if they asked you, you will be willing to do something for them. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a quid pro quo. They do something for you because you do something for them, but they have to believe that you're the sort of person who, if they needed help or assistance, would be willing to provide it. And I think reciprocity is actually a key to successful networking. Structural holes. Now, I've never filled in a real hole in my life, as you can probably see, but I spend my life filling in structural holes. And what they are is people who don't know each other, but should. People who do have some sort of connection, but they don't know that other person. So one of the things you can do as when you're networking is to make connections. This person is very interested in law and economics. This other person I know is very interested in law and economics. Bring those two people together. I have one friend who's an objectivist. I have another friend who's an objectivist. Bring those two friends together. That's called filling in structural holes. Articulate commonalities. I think this is one of the most important things when we meet strangers. Because when we meet strangers, we're not quite sure what to do. What do we say to this person? And the way forward is to try and establish some sort of connection or commonality. So it might be that you come from that same hometown, or that you have mutual friends at the same university, you come from the same country, you're interested in the same political issues, you have the same political ideas, you're interested in the same sports, or if you're really desperate, what films do you like? So when you meet somebody, you should try and put out information about there so that people can then try and identify what those commonalities would be. And the final concept that you find in the networking literature is 3 types of people. There are connectors, people who make connections, who bring people together. There are mavens, which have a strong body of knowledge and information. And there are salesmen, people who go out there and promote and sell these ideas to others. Ideally, you want to be good at all three of those, and you should identify where you think your strengths are and where your weaknesses are. And you want to have within your network people who can maybe compensate for the areas where you seem to be weaker. Events. Events, meetings are probably the best way, most effective way of establishing these sorts of networks. So what you should want to do wherever you are is to start looking as quickly as possible at potential events and go there early and go there often. Go to lots of events, some of which you'll find after been to one, that's not really very helpful, not very interesting, I'm not planning to go there. And then others you'll find, wow, this is really cool, these are my people, that I'll feel comfortable doing it. So you need to decide which ones you want to participate in. And it's best to start with smaller meetings rather than big meetings, because it's much easier to make connections, to meet new people in a smaller environment than a larger one. You want to identify in advance, if you can, who you want to meet. Is it that you want to meet the speaker because you're interested in that person's ideas? Do you want to meet someone from the organization because you're interested in the organization? Do you want to find fellow students? Are you looking for somebody that you want to date? Decide in advance who and the sorts of people are you want to meet when you go to that event. Introduce yourself to the organizer the first time you go to that organization's activities. Unless it's a really large meeting, it may be difficult then for the organizer to do it. And you might not want to do it straight at the beginning when the organizer is worried about the actual event itself. But afterwards, you should introduce yourself as, this is the first time I've been to this meeting, and if they're any good, if the organizers are very good, they will then introduce you to other people, so you'll not be there on your own. Ask a question. So think carefully about what that question should be. Give your name and give something about yourself. So you'll say, you know, I'm Nigel Ashford, I'm a professor at George Mason University and I work with the Institute of Humane Studies. That gives some information out there so that maybe you could be in the audience who say, oh, I went to an IHS seminar, or some sort of connection with you. And be very careful about the question, give it some thought. Don't make it a speech, make it a question. Don't make it a hobby horse that you're the only person in the world who cares about it. Think that it might be something that the rest of the audience might be interested in. And after the event, go up and introduce yourself to the speaker. This is I thought it was interesting, or not sure I agree with you when you said X. Socialize. Very often before an event or after an event, or even the event itself, may simply be a networking exercise, a reception of some sort. It's how students survive. They live off of free drink and free food whenever they can find it, and go to those events either before or ideally after the talk. Introduce yourself to people and introduce the people that you brought with you. Friends that you brought with you, introduce to others. So you should have a goal that every time you go to an event, you should meet at least, and I emphasize at least, one new person. Go up to a stranger and introduce yourself. Particularly look for people who seem to be on their own, who don't seem to know anybody at the event. You might think about organizing your own activities. You might want to run a book club. You might want to invite a speaker to your local Students for Liberty club. You might want to organize dinner parties. Think about some of your own events where you might want to bring people together. And always have a post-event follow-up. You've been to an event. Are there people at that event that you want to follow up with? For example, I want to invite that person to speak to my club. Or that's an organization that sounds really interesting. I don't know very much about it. Can I email them and perhaps have coffee with that system? So think about events that might be of some value. Next, I'm going to go very rapidly for a whole series of tips that you can use in any social event that I think will help you to build those connections. So smile. Smiling really makes a difference when you connect with people. Introduce yourself and give more than a name. One of my pet peeves is that people often introduce themselves and say, well, I'm Nigel. Well, that gives no additional information about yourself that that will help to build and identify what those commonalities are. So when you introduce yourself, give your full name and some other sort of particular information. Give your undivided attention to people. So when you're giving you're looking at somebody, you have a conversation with it. Now your problem is you might see a really hot boy or girl passing behind you, and that's really what you want to give your eyesight attention to. You need to develop the skill to be able to continue that conversation, look like you're continuing it, and keep a good eye on that boy or girl that's passing behind you, but look like you're giving your undivided attention. I just realized there's some things missing from the screen, so let me add those. I realize now seem to be missing. Yeah, they are. So a couple of other things to think about, which are not unfortunately on the screen. You need a very short, less than a minute elevator speech. That is, when you meet somebody, you need a very short conception of how you want to introduce yourself. Of your name and what you're studying or where you go to school. We call it an elevator speech because if you meet somebody on an elevator, you know that person is going to get off fairly quickly. You have a very short time to convey something important about yourself. So think about what is the sort of nugget that you would want to convey to somebody, and you might want to practice that and have that ready as quickly as you can. Students should have business cards. I know most students think, oh, this is something you get when you go to work. But you're going to meet lots of people. It's very important for you to have something that the other person can remember you by giving them the business card. And the other advantage is that very often you want that person's business card. It's somebody you want to connect with again in the future. So giving them your card, that pretty much encourages them to give you their card. That's the bit of information you want that can lead to a follow-up attention later. In many events, you get a name badge. You should always wear your name badge up here, high on the right. This is because when you meet somebody, you want to maintain your eye contact while also reading the name. You want to associate the face and the name. So put your name tag on the right and try and make it as high as possible. So I'm sorry that was missing from the handout. Sincere praise. If you meet people who meet the speaker, they've written an article, something that you really like, please do give them your praise on that information. Share information. You may meet people and they sound like they're interested in something. You may say, oh, well, I know about this organization or this event that you might be interested in attending. When you talk to people, listen and understand. One of the things that libertarians often get criticized for is that they don't listen to the other side. So you should present your ideas, listen to that person, see where that person's coming from, try to understand why that person might disagree with you, and then try and find a way of fitting in with your ideas with theirs. So for example, it's very common for people to believe that libertarians don't care about the poor. That's very often a response you'll get. You need to think about listening, oh, is that what the concern of this person is? And then demonstrate, oh, it's precisely because we care about the poor and that we believe that free markets reduce poverty, as historically has been true, is why we support these ideas. Don't interrupt. And this is a classic case, I should say, of do as I say and not as I do. I'm a well-known interrupter. So what you want to do is try and listen to that person, without interrupting, even if you know what that person is going to say. After a while, if it goes on too long, you may need to interrupt. And this is particularly aimed at men, because interrupting women, because this is a very common feature that psychologists identified, is that men have a terrible tendency to interrupt women. Don't interrupt women or indeed anyone else. When you meet people, ask open questions, so broader about, so what made you interested in these ideas? I said introduce individuals to each other, so not only you're extending your own network, but you're also extending the networks of others, reciprocity. Ask people about themselves. People love to talk about themselves. Now once they've said something about themselves, that gives you the opportunity to do what you really want to do, is to talk about yourself. But get them to start, ask them questions about themselves before you start saying too much about yourself. Try to maintain good eye contact. If you're not looking at the person, if you're looking at the floor, that sort of suggests you're not terribly interested in what the person is saying. Now you've got to be careful, you don't want to seem to be like staring at that person all the time. So now and again you want to sort of gracefully put your eyes down somewhere as if you're thinking about what the person just said to you. You don't need to do it straight away. Do not fold your arms. It's the body language that says that you're not really interested in what the person is saying. It is a problem. We don't quite know what to do with our arms, but try to avoid doing that, putting hands in your pocket. That sends a bad body message. If you go to an event on your own and you don't know anyone, join a big group, not a smaller group, because it's easier for you to go to join a big group or perhaps stand a little bit outside of it. Normally the big group will widen itself to allow you to join. You can listen then to what that group is saying, and then at an appropriate moment you can add your own particular items to that event. So some very specific tips on what to do when you go to an event. Here are some resources that you might find useful, and a reminder that we'll send it out to you after the event, so you can keep up with it. So one obvious network to be involved with is the European Students for Liberty. You're probably already involved with your local club, but you want to make sure that you know about what's happening at the international and European level. So for example, this autumn, there's going to be a series of regional conferences by SFL all around Europe. You want to find out if there's one that you convenient for you to attend to. In your own country, there will be organizations which promote libertarian ideas, and you may not know them all. So you can go to a website, Atlas Network, and you can do a search for any country or indeed any city in the world, and it will tell you what those libertarian groups are in your country. And then go and visit the website, read more about it. Very often they'll have a newsletter that you can sign up for, and sometimes they'll have specific events aimed at students. Now, IHS, all our programs are based in the United States, but there are two organizations in Europe which run seminars promoting free markets and limited government. So there's the Institute for Economic Studies that run several summer seminars. Go and have a look at their website. There's something called the Fund for American Studies, which runs two seminars in Europe, one in Prague and one in Greece every summer. There's a series of IHS websites that you might want to explore. libertyguide.com. There's a lot of advice there about opportunities. So you can go to our opportunities bank and have a look at what sort of opportunities there are, for example, essay contests or seminars or internships. Go and have a look at the opportunities section of that. There's learnliberty.org, which is our educational website where we have a wide variety of short videos that you might be able to use for your educational purposes in your club. And dare I mention it, I give a short introduction about what is classical liberalism in under 9 minutes that you might find interesting. There's some other videos by me as well, but you should be able to find something that may be interesting to you for the use of you for your own personal education or for educating members of your club. Cosmos Online is our website specifically for academics, so for professors and graduate students who want to pursue academia. Perhaps I should mention that's my specific job at IHS, is to work with graduate students who want to become professors. So if you are, you should definitely contact me. Facebook is obviously increasingly an important network for young people to spread their ideas. So you may come across an interesting video, an interesting article, spread that to others. Just be careful, though, about two things. One is the tone of how you write on Facebook. Do you want people to engage with your ideas? You should treat other people with some respect. And also you should make sure you don't overload with the amount of political materials, because many of your Facebook friends are not going to be that interested in politics. They'll switch off if all you see beginning is a barrage of 10 or 12 different items a day of things that they themselves are not particularly interested in. You should look for mentors, people who have knowledge of an area and want to share it with the person being mentored. So, for example, you might want to see, is there a professor who should be a mentor? Is there somebody where you're working who should be a mentor? And you should think about friends and acquaintances. Be quite open to ask them about, well, these are the things I want to do, these are things I'm interested in. Do you have any suggestions about how I could extend that beyond? And then finally, there's IHS itself, the Institute of Humane Studies. We run lots of programs, run seminars, internships, we have scholarships for graduate students, we have websites, we do lots of webinars, we have lots of stuff. So if you're not already familiar with IHS, do visit our website and have a look. So to conclude, go forth and network. Party with a purpose. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Now the floor is open to anyone and everyone who wants to ask a question. Just type it in the question tab in your control panel. And I've already received one, so please type in more if you have another question. First one is from John, who asks, what in your opinion are the most frequent errors made by young people when they want to find a job or go into academia, etc.?
Oh, well, I think there's a big difference between when we're talking about academia and when we're talking about a job. It sounds like you might be interested in either. So let me say something first of all about the academia, which is what I particularly work with. What I think is, I don't believe that there is a strong prejudice against libertarians in the academic world. What I think is a problem is that as a libertarian, or indeed anybody who wants to be a graduate student, you need to understand what the nature of the debate is within your discipline. What are people talking about? What are the ideas that people think are currently interesting? And what can I, as a classical liberal, bring to that debate? Whereas there's a tendency, I think we may have all of us may have come across this, for libertarians just to talk about things that interest them and to sort of hammer you away at saying, well, this is what I think, this is what I think, this is what I think. Instead, what you might want to look at is, what is it that people are talking about and the questions that interest you? What are the people who disagree with are saying about it? And can you provide something more, bring something new to the table? Because I think that academics, what they like are new ideas, but they want good, well thought out ideas. But I said, if you're thinking about academia, you should definitely email me, nashford@gmu.edu, where I can talk about that. In terms of the jobs, actually the biggest errors, I know this is, I always find this very strange, but usually your resumes or curriculum vitae of many people on the job market is full of errors. So we go through CVs of our people either going into academia or going into the policy work, for example, or even journalism, or perhaps not only even journalism. And we look at their CVs, and often they're very poorly written. There's lots of mistakes in it. There's a lack of consistency in how the CV is presented. There's, what else is there? There's often a lot of irrelevant material in it. Remember that the person who's going to read your CV, you want to identify, they're interested in a few key things. You want to make sure that when somebody picks up your CV, they can immediately see what the things that are most important, what your strong points are. So writing a CV is also about what not to include as well as what to include. Obviously a lot may depend on the sort of nature of the job that you're going into, but I would say that's the most important thing is if you're going on the job market, is to think very carefully about your CV, get someone else to have a look at your CV. And it might be that there's somebody at university may have a careers office who would be willing to have a look at it and give some comments on it.
Okay, thanks. The next question is from Matej. I hope I pronounced that right. I've often been to an event, especially business events, with lots of people and absolutely nobody I knew, lots of little groups. How do you engage somebody and where would you start?
Right, so what you're saying is that there is, as I said in my presentation, is that when you go to an event, ideally you want to look for a bigger group because it's easier for you to integrate yourself into that bigger group. What I think you're also saying is that perhaps there isn't, they're all sort of relatively small groups. Well, one of the first things, as I mentioned in the presentation, is you might want to try and identify who the organizer is, or there may be organizers from the activity. Go and introduce yourself to them, and if they're any good, they will then try and introduce you to other people. Remember though, when you introduce yourself to them, you should give them some information about about yourself, so that they can think, oh, that person you should meet this other person or these other people at that particular event. You should also, I think, avoid, when it comes to small group, avoid joining a group where there's just two people. Very often when there are two people in a group, they may actually be talking about something that's more personal, and that a third person is coming in and sort of invading their space. So go for the big group, avoid the really small group. If they're all in relatively small groups of 4 and 5, then what I would tend to do is just sort of slowly go around and listen to what are the conversations going on in these smaller groups and seeing if there's any particular conversation that you would like to participate in. So circulate round once, hear what's going on, and then identify which the group that seems to be the friendliest, or see if you have a conversation that you find most interesting.
Okay, next question from Kai. For us libertarian students, what is the best way that you recommend for us to deal with a hostile reaction that we sometimes receive from professors and other students when we express our political views without endangering our academic career but staying true to our beliefs at the same time?
Right, no, I understand that there is that particular problem. Well, I think the most important thing is to show that you understand what the professor is saying or what the other student is saying, and that you can give a reason why you disagree with them. So you need to understand, oh, that person thinks that free markets are bad for the poor, or that globalization is bad for the poor. And then you can begin with by saying, no, I think globalization is good for the poor because, or globalization is actually good for local cultures because. So you're beginning with their assumptions, and that you're then able to explain why you don't agree with them. Now, sometimes that may not be true. Sometimes they may be motivated by a purely normative difference. It's not that so Hayek used to say we should assume that we agree on the ends, but we disagree about the means. So you want to be clear about, yes, we have common ends, but we disagree about most effective means of achieving that goals. I don't think that's always true. Sometimes it may be that people have different normative ends. So then I think the point to mention is to say that people do have different normative ends, that the student you're discussing with, their primary goal may be that I want an egalitarian society. And then you can respond by saying, well, I think the most important thing is individual freedom, and then go on to say why you believe that a society which is based on individual freedom is actually better for equality. And not necessarily that everybody will have equality of results, but, for example, political equality, respect for human beings, human dignity, human equality, equality before the law, increasing opportunities. So you may want to identify what exactly is it that they favor, because very often they're not very clear. Particularly I find people who, when they talk about equality, they're not actually very clear about, well, what would their ideal egalitarian society look like? So maybe partly, as I said, it's a question about trying to identify what their ends are, and you share them or you don't. And is it about simply pursuing different means to achieve the where you agreed ends? Oh, something about professors, I think. Sorry. One thing I think about, I can't deny that there are some professors, well, most professors will disagree with you. That's a given. But I actually think that most professors, what they like is interesting students. People who come up, who seem to be engaged, who want to put forward ideas, because that stimulates the rest of the class. So I think actually most professors are not, even if they're hostile to your ideas, they're not hostile to the libertarian student, provided that libertarian student demonstrates that they've understood other points of view, they show respect for different points of view, that they've done their research and are presenting good papers. So I'm not saying that's true of every single professor, but I think that is true of many, if not most, professors who are not libertarians.
Okay, thanks. I think the talk was pretty clear and straightforward because I haven't received any more questions. But if I just may interject with a question that I prepared myself. How do you react? This is kind of in between talking in front of groups and networking. How do you react to large groups that seem to be hostile to your ideas, even when networking? And is it useful to network in groups or organizations that are not really affiliated with the liberty movement, or are indeed adversaries of the liberty movement?
Well, I think a lot may depend on what the nature of the organization is. So, for example, there might be a civil liberties organization which seems to be which seems to be left-wing, but you can go there and talk about how libertarians share their civil liberties ideas. Or you may have an anti-war organization. You can talk about how a libertarian foreign policy would reduce the amount of war. But actually, I do think that it is worth engaging even with a hostile audience, because I think that many people in the audience will never have heard an alternative point of view. So these ideas will be totally new to them. Well, what we know is that psychologically, when you hear a point of view which is different from yours, your initial reaction is to defend your ideas. So rarely, when you're in a discussion, does the other person say, oh, yeah, you've convinced me, I changed my mind. They rarely say that. Indeed, I would argue they shouldn't say that, because they haven't had a chance to really digest the ideas that you presented. But what you don't know is that that person then will go away, and the next time they discuss that topic, they brought some of the ideas that you presented to them with them, and will argue very differently, or may argue very differently than what they said when they said to you. So I do think actually we can appeal to a wider audience. Now again, probably most of those people in that audience will resist those ideas. And you have to think about opportunity costs. Is it better for you to spend your time speaking to a hostile audience or to an audience which at least is more openly, possibly more sympathetic to your ideas? But my view is that certainly in the early days, you should take as many opportunities to present your ideas as possible. And then you can also think about how then do I present these ideas in a way that they can relate to. So yes, I am willing and have spoken to sort of hostile organizations.
The next question is from Alex. On the ethics of networking, is it proper to get a job, albeit partially, because you have a connection that a person who might deserve it more lacks?
Well, I'm not defending the system. All I would say is that you not participating in the network does not prevent that from happening. So you're not going to change the system by not participating. But also the second thing is, who do you know? How do you know that you are not necessarily the best person for that? Surely it should be the person making the decision. The employer should decide whether they do or do not think that that person is suitable. The third thing is, information is costly. If you're looking to employ somebody and you get like 100 applications, it's going to spend you a lot of time deciding who it is that you would want to employ. If you know some of those people already, you have some information to say, well, I know this person seems a nice person. I know that my friends who know this person have something valuable. So it may well be in that pile of 100, there's somebody who might be better at that job. But from the person making the decision, that's going to be very time-consuming. The costs of finding that person may be very high. So they're trying to lower the transaction cost of employing somebody by employing people with a connection. And the other thing I would say is that a connection doesn't guarantee you the job. What the connection may do is that person who's reviewing applications, perhaps they hear from someone who knows you and say, oh, blah, blah has applied for this job. What that means is that the person making the decision will give more attention to your application, which then might be difficult if they have no additional information about you. That's not going to get you the job. If you've applied for a job which is not suitable for you, that's not going to get you the job. But it gives you an entry into it. Now, as I said, I'm not necessarily defending that system, but I think you have to understand that you yourself are not propping up that system. You're not denying somebody opportunities that otherwise they would have by using that connection. So I don't think it's unethical.
Okay, I haven't received any. Oh, yes, I just have. From Victoria. This question is more appropriate for an advanced grad student or an early career scholar, according to her. What are your thoughts on networking with media personalities?
You mean if you're an academic? Is that what you mean?
I think that's what she means. Yes.
Oh, right. Is it an academic with a media personality? It's an interesting way of putting it. Well, let's say, there's lots of things here. I think if your goal is to be an academic and you don't yet have an academic job, you should be careful about coming across as too polemical. However, if you're doing your academic research which you think of interest to a wider audience, then get publishing in a magazine, for example, rather than an academic journal is actually something that I think would be quite attractive, or getting coverage in a newspaper I think could be quite attractive. The point is, you should be in the media because you have something interesting to say and that you've got some new contribution to make. You do want to be careful that you don't come across as an ideologue. So you shouldn't be writing polemical pieces at that particular stage. If you can find a suitable venue, then then do so. And so if specific personalities or newspapers or magazines you're interested in, then let me know, and I can tell you more about whether I think this would be an ideal thing for you to pursue or not.
All right. I hope all your questions have been answered. If not, feel free to send me or Nigel a follow-up email. I'm sure he will be willing to answer anything that you might wonder in addition to the questions that were answered. Thanks very much, Nigel, for being with us tonight and giving the talk.
You're welcome. Thanks very much for the invitation. I will be speaking at the European Students for Liberty Conference in February, and I hope to meet some of you there.
Yes.
March, I'm sorry. In March, I look forward to seeing you there. Bye.
Yes. And there will be an additional follow-up email with the PowerPoint that Nigel gave, so that everyone has the resources that he mentioned. To conclude, I'd like to make a few more announcements. We at ESFL are organizing for the first time a number of regional conferences, as Nigel already said. The first ones that are coming up are October 20th in Stockholm and Turin. Stockholm is an English-speaking conference. Turin will be an exclusively Italian conference. So for anyone who is interested in signing up, we have some great speakers. In Stockholm, we will have Mr. Steen Jacobsen, who is the CFO of Saxo Bank, and also Mr. Osvaldo Valdez, who was a Cuban dissident, and he was imprisoned during the Black Spring of 2003. Many other speakers will be attending as well. It's going to be 2 great conferences, so check out our website for any information on that. Next week, SFL will be hosting a webinar on the moral arc of science with Michael Shermer, who is a member of the Skeptic Society. And we will also have our first Italian webinar called La Città Rende Liberi, which means city makes free, or I don't know if I translate that correctly. That's going to be in Italian. That's going to be at 6 p.m. Brussels time. The SFL webinar will be at 2 a.m. Brussels time, but the recordings will come online afterwards. So if you're interested in that, feel free to check those out later. Then for the rest, keep an eye on our website, Facebook, and Twitter for any additional information. It's been a pleasure hosting everything tonight. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for all your questions, and I hope to be hearing you soon. In the meantime, take care and good night.
Party with a purpose.